Welcome to the Charity Changemakers podcast, the show where we dive into the journeys, challenges and successes of the leaders shaping the sector today. Each episode I'll be sitting down with the senior charity leaders to hear their stories, uncover their insights and explore what it really takes to drive change today. And if you enjoy the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe, like and share to help us reach as many people as possible and showcase the incredible charities that are coming on the show. So whether you're a charity professional, a trustee, thinking about joining the sector or making that next step in your career, or just passionate about making an impact, then this podcast is for you. Let's get started. I'm delighted to be joined by Claire House-Norman today on the Charity Changemakers podcast. We're doing something a little bit different. Claire doesn't actually work for a charity or a not-for-profit organisation. She works for the philanthropy company as a director and fundraising consultant, and obviously supports a whole range of different charities. She's got some great insights that I think organisations, regardless of your size, whether small right through to large charities, are going to find really interesting. Some market trends that she's seeing across the sector and across fundraising at the moment, and some tips and ideas on ways to engage new donors within the life of your charity that will come out through this conversation. Claire's got a career working within the charity sector across a whole range of income streams, from community fundraising to trust fundraising to right through to the high net worth giving in a variety of different settings and contexts, from animal welfare, conservation, education and heritage sector to name but just a few. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure you're going to really enjoy this episode. So look, that's enough from me. Let's get on and meet our changemaker. I'm really pleased to be joined by Claire today, who's the director and fundraising consultant at the philanthropy company. Claire, thanks so much for joining us on the Charity Changemakers podcast.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Yeah, that's great. Good. And as I say most weeks, I can never do justice to someone's introduction. So do you want to just take a minute or so just to, obviously introduce a little bit of who you are, what you do and where you work?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Claire. I work for a philanthropy company. I've been a fundraiser and undertaking some PR and marketing for over 30 years now, which is really horrible to say, predominantly in-house. So now working for a consultancy. I've worked for every type of charity imaginable, from the tiny to the large. I've run a visitor centre for an animal welfare charity. I've worked for a cathedral. I've worked for a university. And probably in common with a lot of fundraisers, I've grown up through community fundraising, and then I now specialise in major donors. So I've been outside Tesco's and football grounds holding the cans, getting soaked. I've worn costumes in shopping centres to try and attract interest at the charity. I've done all those weird jobs.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and anyone who's worked in fundraising, I'm sure will absolutely appreciate all of those different things. But that real range of experience will be fascinating as we move through the conversation and hear a little bit about that career journey, and I guess how those have influenced that career. The moves that you've made, and now working within a fundraising consultancy, which is a bit of a different thing for us here on the podcast. Normally we have people that are working, actively within a charity. So I think it's going to be some really fascinating insight as well, not just in what it means to be a consultant within the charity world and what that looks like, but also, I guess, some of the insights that you can bring to what the state of the fundraising market, if we want to call it that, at the moment as we speak. But before we get into all of that, we obviously have these quickfire questions that the listeners from season 1 set for our guests that are coming on in this second season. And the first one is, what are you listening to or reading at the moment?
Okay, so what I'm reading at the moment is a book called Dark Matter, The New Science of the Microbiome. All about gut health and how that could impact on lots of different parts of the body. Weird book, but I'm into sport, I'm into nutrition, and it was really interesting to read about the microbiome and how it links to things like sort of mouth health. So weird topic. What am I listening to at the moment? A bit embarrassing. I'm listening to a 90s trance podcast.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, not embarrassing at all. Yeah, you own it. Yeah, absolutely. So that's great. And okay. And a book recommendation there for us all to go and look up as well. So no, fab. This second quickfire question, I really, I think I've grown to like this one. I think, as when I first read it, I was like, oh, I don't know whether that's going to be tricky for people or not. But we've had some fascinating, brilliant answers over the series so far. So, what is a quality that you had as a child that you still possess today as an adult?
Curiosity. I think as a kid I was called nosy, but that translates really well into fundraising because I really love meeting people. I love finding out what makes them tick. I like getting to know people. I love new projects. And that's great when you're a fundraiser working with major donors. So I was called nosy. I like the word curiosity now.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's always a better word for a personal trait, isn't there? Yeah, absolutely. But it's really interesting. It's a bit of a theme actually across a lot of the fundraisers, chief executives, directors that we've had on the show. Around that curiosity. There's something that comes with curiosity, I think, for people that are working within the sector. Claire, I don't know how often these come around for you, but if you manage to have a completely free day, how would you choose to spend it?
Yeah, do you know, this was the toughest question to think about
Interesting.
because I'm quite active, so I don't have free days. But actually, perfect free day would be start off in the gym. I train for a sport, so I'd go and do that. At the moment, I'm experimenting with making my own chocolate truffles. So I then have
Right.
some quiet time in the kitchen to make my own chocolate. And then probably, if it's autumn or winter, it's going to be on the sofa with my log burner and a decent book or an Agatha Christie film.
Yes, perfect, great. Okay, well that's it's not a quiet day. There's a lot
No,
going on.
probably not.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Okay, well there's probably something like you say within that yeah demonstrates the type of individual that you are. That I'm sure we'll hear more of as we move through the podcast. And look, I mean, I always feel like this is a big question, but it's always fascinating to hear because it's very rare that I speak to anybody that says, "Oh, yeah, I grew up knowing that I wanted to work in fundraising or work in the charity sector." And you talk there about animal welfare, education that you've worked with, fundraising that you've worked within, cathedral as well. You mentioned, so there's a variety in there. But how did it all start? How did you start working in the charity or volunteering or fall into the charity sector?
Yeah, probably a very similar story to a lot of people. Yeah, I didn't grow up thinking I wanted to be a fundraiser. And actually, I grew up either wanting to be a poet or work
Yeah.
in advertising, which is probably a strange career choice for a girl back in the 70s and 80s. I did a degree in public relations and English literature, and I was determined to go to the big city, um, do PR, work for some really good consultancies. So I contacted the biggest consultancy near me, where I was living at the time in Cardiff, and offered to work for them for free for 6 months as an intern. Was lucky enough to secure an interview with the managing director, kind of wangled my way in there, had an hour and a half grilling, and at the end of it, bearing in mind I'd done my degree and was determined to go down this path, he said to me, "You'll be rubbish in corporate PR," but he used a slightly stronger word than rubbish. "You're too ethical. You wouldn't last, but I'm a chair of a local charity that needs public relations and fundraising support. Go and cut your teeth on that."
Yeah.
So I was completely crushed as a 21-year-old who thought I knew what I was going to do. I was working in a fish and chip shop in the evenings to get money and make my way. So during the day, I then went and volunteered for the charity. It turned into a job, and it turned out that I really loved fundraising. I loved making a difference, and I loved being able to use the sort of PR and marketing skills to benefit charities. And yeah, it started from there. So I definitely fell into it, didn't choose it. And I probably at that stage, if you'd asked me, I would not have thought that so many years later I'd still be in fundraising. But
Yeah.
I got hooked, and I've never wanted to leave.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I really, yeah, fascinating from, I guess, what maybe you could describe as a bit of a brutal first experience of it. I guess that interview type thing, and a very blunt response, like you say. It would be, I guess, easy to walk away from that feeling quite bruised and battered. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess over time, maybe it becomes easier to stomach and reflect on that type of conversation because of what it's opened up for you. But I guess at the time, maybe it didn't feel like that at all.
No, it didn't. But I think it's probably good grounding actually in the charity sector, because regardless of the role in the charity sector, these are not easy jobs, are
Yeah.
they? Whether you're at the bottom, whether you're at the top, you get really blunt feedback that can be from your supporters. if you're a member of staff and a CEO, it can be from your trustees. It can be from your staff if you're the CEO. It can be from the public when we look at what's happened recently with the press attacking charities. So I think if you're going to be in the charity sector, if you're going to be able to hold on to that vibe that you're there to make a difference, then you've got to have that thick skin,
Yeah.
and cope with the honest feedback. So no, I didn't appreciate it. It was awful. It destroyed me for a
Yeah.
while, but then I did manage to get through it, and I found a career I love. And I think it probably gave me a forewarning of what working in the voluntary sector is going to be like.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about that. What that first role looked like. What was it that you sort of landed yourself in?
It was with a small charity in Wales, a small children's charity, and I didn't have a clue. It was for a charity for children with cerebral palsy. I blundered in. I look back now with embarrassment at 21-year-old me, as I'm sure we all do. You look back at that time and think,
Yeah.
wow, I was a bit of an idiot. But it was community fundraising, which is a great way to learn because it was working with volunteers. It was working with people who were really invested in the charity. Quite a lot of them didn't have the money, the populations we were working with, but they gave
Mm.
more than the rich people at that time.
Yeah.
And so it was standing outside football grounds. It was standing outside Tesco's with collection cans. It was supporting the local newspaper who were running a campaign for us. It was very long, very hard hours. It was at the coalface. It was an uncomfortable learning experience, but I learned so much. I
Yeah.
was only there on a short-term contract. And then from there, I loved writing. I went for a job with a wildlife or conservation charity because I have certain key interests, as we all do for
Yeah.
fundraisers, and animals conservation is one of my areas. I went for a job as a community manager. It was a massive step up, didn't get it. But then they came back to me a few months later and they'd failed to recruit a grant making trust fundraiser. And I could write. I used to write in my
Yeah.
spare time, and they said they would train me and see how I got on.
Yeah.
So I landed in a grant making trust fundraising job, having no clue about it. So that was another great opportunity. And again, completely different type of fundraising.
Yeah, I'm going to say very different to that community fundraising experience, but I guess bringing that sense that community fundraising is a bit more like you say, cold face, front facing, isn't it? And bringing that
Yeah.
experience as well as clearly gifted at being able to write, and the two things, because ultimately there's what relationship building that comes with all of that.
Yeah, there is. And I did a course with an organization called Common Purpose a few years ago, and it's about leading beyond experience. So we often think about leadership as being the person in the front. And often when you look at very successful models, the leader can be in the middle. They can
Mm.
lead from behind as well, but they're not always the one out the front. And the commonality of being a community fundraiser or a trust fundraiser or a major donor fundraiser is you're often convincing people who are above you in the pecking order,
Yeah.
whether that's in your organization, your trustees, or perhaps people outside as volunteers, major donors, to follow your lead, to trust you. So actually, convincing volunteers to go out on stormy evenings, can rattle, really unpleasant conditions. That translated into convincing major donors, multimillionaires that I've worked with to support the cause that
Yeah.
I was invested in. So again, those skills so translatable. I'm now a trustee as well of a charity, and I've been a trustee of different organisations in my time.
Mm.
And it's given me a real respect for the people at the coalface. And I
Yeah.
think that dichotomy of staff to trustee is something that sometimes we don't appreciate as staff or as trustees. So that leadership, and everyone has a leadership role regardless of their level. I
Yeah.
think being a community fundraiser on the ground, it taught me so much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And in those early parts of your career as a community fundraiser, and then into the trust role, I mean, obviously you talk about an organisation there that said, actually, we think we've got a role with you, we'll invest in you and build in you. I mean, was it particular individuals, I guess, that saw that spark within you, that there was like there's something that we can work with here, that we can train and develop, or were there other courses or membership body, a variety of different things with this to help in that progression, or was there things that particularly stand out as you reflect on your early part of that career that really helped you in that development?
Yeah, it was individuals actually. I mean, I grew up through fundraising in the 90s and probably early 2000s, and there weren't really the training courses out there. So
Sure.
there was the Institute of Fundraising, and Directory of Social Change before they merged their training. And I went on some training courses, but there weren't really the professional bodies and support networks back then. So very much it was learning on the job. It was experiential learning, which, let's be honest, is the most valuable, but actually sometimes the most painful way to learn. And so it was learning from individuals. I had some brilliant managers. I had some who were less brilliant, and I learned well from both of those. And actually, with grant making trusts at that time, they were perhaps less subscribed than they are now. They gave me some brilliant feedback on my applications. And there are some grant making trusts actually that I've worked with throughout my career that have helped me by finessing my work and offering support. And I mean, that's been amazing because it means the donors have actually said to me, look, we need to tweak what you're doing here so that we can get your application through to the trustees. That's just been so invaluable. But I think that when you spot talent in someone, when you see an aptitude, that's what we should be exploring as charity leaders. It's great if we can recruit someone, whatever position we're looking for, if they can come in and hit the ground running because they've done the job. We know in the charity sector that that's increasingly rare, that the talented people are being headhunted out into the corporate sector. And certainly in terms of fundraisers, they're moving up into senior positions or they're leaving the sector. Yeah. So actually spotting the aptitude and being willing to train that and home grow, I know that takes time. I think that's the way the voluntary sector will continue to thrive. Yeah. I've done my absolute best to pay forward the support I've had from some key individuals who've given me their time, in some cases their money. There was one amazing lady, I'm not going to mention her name, but when I was at Salisbury Cathedral, she felt I would benefit from the network at the Institute of Directors. So she nominated and paid my membership fee. Yeah. I will always be grateful to her. So I've paid that back with mentoring and with support of up and coming staff where I can. Yeah. And I just think that's really important in our sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that model that we see time and time again here on the podcast. We hear people talking about, some of the journeys that we've shared from people from executive assistant to chief executive, from fundraising officer to director of fundraising. Those journeys that people go on. It's where a lot of the time, people have seen, exactly what you said, that aptitude, got the right approach. There's that raw skill set and that passion for the cause that actually, yes, it does take a bit of time, but investing in that individual, and I guess whilst also recognizing that it's for the greater good of the sector, because it might not be that person stays in that same organisation for the whole of their career, because we do tend to see people move about, and obviously you talked about different charities, organisations that you work for, but it sort of pays it forward into the sector. Yeah, absolutely. So what did that journey then look like for you next? So we've got community fundraising, some trust fundraising comes through. I mean, obviously we know the journey at the moment now is very much on the high net worth. How did it sort of navigate its path for you?
Yeah, so you can't tell by the accent, but I'm actually Scottish by birth, and I wanted to return back to Scotland. So I took a punt. I got a job with the Scottish Wildlife Trust as grant making trust fundraiser. And from there, I went to the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland as I think it was fundraising manager. So predominantly trust, but actually a much bigger job in terms of there was community fundraising, there was marketing. There I had my first real brush with charity law through no fault of their own. They had to go through a SIPRE or a sort of return of funds issue. And I had to manage that, having never done that. Again, baptism by fire, but that stood me in good stead. That then meant that I delivered sessions for the Institute of Fundraising in Scotland on charity law and how it impacts on fundraisers. So again, I felt I could pay that forward a little bit. Then decided we had to move back down to England. My parents are in the southwest. My mother-in-law is elderly in the southwest. Moved back down to Bristol Zoo as a general fundraising manager. And from there, I went to an equine welfare charity. There's a theme here. Yes. And that was as a head of comms and fundraising. So that was an exciting job because it actually brought everything in. So it was major donors and trusts, but it was managing the volunteers. It was community fundraising. It was the visitor centre, the marketing, very early forays into digital marketing when we were starting to look at whether you could use mobile phones back then for raising money. That was a wild job. And then I did actually stop when I became a freelance consultant for 3 years. I needed a break,
Yeah, sure.
and that was the biggest risk I've
Mm.
probably taken in my career. I was the main wage earner, and I took a punt. I'd never been a consultant. I'd never
Yep.
been freelance. I went into it with the naivety of youth.
Yep.
And that was a really good learning experience again. So I think taking risk is something that we should all be prepared to do because it will change our journey. I learned so much about myself
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
the 3 years I was a freelancer. And hence it led me to my current role where I realized that I enjoyed that side of the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was quite happy being a freelancer, but the business model needed to change. I was either going to have to employ people or change what I was doing because there was just too much work. I didn't really want to employ people and do paperwork. I enjoyed the fundraising and helping charities.
Yeah.
And I then got headhunted and offered the chance to set up the first fundraising department for Salisbury Cathedral.
Right. Yeah.
And it's the last medieval cathedral in the UK to have a fundraising department. So I knew if I didn't take it, I'd never be able to do that job.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I also like heritage, and it
Yeah.
was to fundraise for their major repairs. So I jumped
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
became director of fundraising for them.
Quite a different sort of setting to the animal welfare and conservation type charity. I'm interested in that transition. Is it Salisbury Cathedral that have got the really small foundations, or have I remembered that right?
They are fairly shallow, yes, because
Yes.
it's a very high water table in Salisbury.
Yeah.
It's a floodplain.
Yeah.
So for anyone watching this who's thinking about going out for a day, if you go into Salisbury Cathedral and you get a tour with one of the volunteers, they will take you through up the nave, and they will lift small flagstone in the floor,
Yeah.
and there's a water uh, sort of checker, and basically it's a broomstick with a bit of sponge around it, and they put it down, lift it up, and see how high the water table is. It's
Yeah.
that sophisticated, but
Yeah.
yes, shallow foundations.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um
I'm not sure where I've plucked
I
that
think
from, but yeah. Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, well
Yeah.
remembered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would just say from there I then went to Bournemouth University for 12 years, a very long time, before
Yeah.
I took this job on last November.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more commonality in organisation type than
Mm.
probably most of us realise, and certainly I think the trustees don't always see that. So when I had the interview for Bournemouth University, they said, "How will you cope working with academics?" And I said, "Well, I've worked for lots of conservation organisations where I've worked with scientists, and they are academics, and I've worked with the clergy, who are also academics. So they go across the
Mm.
organisation.
True.
And if we're looking at fundraising, it's relationships.
Mm.
You just have to be passionate. So you could argue I'm a career fundraiser, but every cause I've worked for, I felt passionate about.
Yeah.
And I felt I can give to as a donor. So I always give to the charities I'm working with. I wouldn't work with a charity that didn't tick my boxes. So I have the passion, I can convey that. And it's
Yeah.
relationships, whether it's asking someone to volunteer for you by collecting money to go and run the London Marathon, to introduce you to their billionaire contact, to host a private dinner in a members club in London. It's relationships and it's working with people. And that's a commonality
Yeah.
across, I think, all fundraising jobs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was really interesting insight. I think, I mean, I've been working in recruitment now for just over 6 years, and I quite often I find myself saying to clients, "Oh, half the battle is finding people that are passionate about your cause." The more that I work in recruitment, I wonder whether it's higher than 50%. Actually, I mean, clearly you need to have some skills and competency and experience and background in there as well. But yeah, so same. The people that you see that we place that thrive, that go on to do, make a difference, do great things. And I know they kind of sound like cliches and cheesy phrases within the charity sector, but they're true. Are the
Yeah.
people that when they've interviewed, when they presented, when they've put in their application, you can see there is a real value alignment between them as an individual and the cause. And I guess that was something that chap in that first interview, right, where the start, with your character traits around, you're far too ethical to work in this corporate PR. There's a better sector for you. I guess you want to see that within individuals as they come
Yeah.
forward. And it's interesting you talk about these transitions, because we don't see a lot of movement between fundraisers from an academic world, so education, or in a heritage or arts type sector like a cathedral, actually you see a lot of education fundraisers recruit within the education world, and I guess those that you might
Yeah.
the more traditional, straightforward charity, recruiting within their own as well. You don't see a lot of crossover between those two particular sectors. So it's interesting to hear your insights on that as well.
Yeah, so the Chief Operating Officer at Bournemouth University, um, the fundraising department hadn't been succeeding particularly for a number of years. Lots of reasons to that, as there often is if fundraising isn't thriving. And he decided he wanted something different. Now, he was actually an ex-NHS leader and he knew how fundraising worked in the NHS. And so he decided that they should look for a charity fundraiser. He
Yeah,
wanted someone with a slightly different mindset, which was fascinating. And I do think actually a lot of the times I've succeeded in my career when I've taken risks, it's because I haven't known what's not possible.
yeah,
It's quite easy the more experience you get to think, oh no, that won't work, that's been tried, or I can't do that. And the great thing about moving into a new sector, I had no idea what wouldn't be possible. So I just jumped and assumed I could make it happen. And sometimes that ignorance is bliss mindset has allowed me to succeed. So I, for instance, at the university had this naive idea that we really should be training and populating the charity sector with new fundraisers. That I thought it's a great career. If fundraisers decide to jump sector, then or go into the commercial sector or go into different charity roles, the foundational skills you build up as a
mm,
fundraiser are incredible.
yeah,
So I wanted to run a fundraising academy, and I badgered my boss and said, "Give me the budget." He said, "Build a business case." So I did. Built the business case, secured the funding, and then they said, "Great, go and run it on top of your day job as director of fundraising and alumni." So I did for 2 years. And
yeah,
I took placement students who had a year's placement as part of their degree at Bournemouth University,
mm,
and I trained them along with a load of partner charities. We had a curriculum. So I wrote the curriculum, I wrote all the coursework. They had detailed sessions on charity law, on psychology, donor dominance, you name it. They then went and fundraised for partner charities on the ground, and we did free consultancy for lots of small charities. And it was an incredible amount of work. I had no idea, and I was not equipped to do it, but I did it.
yeah,
With the support of a brilliant team around me, I hasten to add, it wasn't all me. And the great thing is, over half of those people are still in fundraising roles. Some
yeah,
decided it wasn't for them, but there are some awesome fundraisers out there that
yeah,
wouldn't have gone into that if they hadn't have experienced fundraising at uni. So I think it's not just about different sectors looking outside themselves. I think it is about looking at different skill sets.
yeah,
And yes, if you go and work for a university having never done that, it is a different mindset. There is bureaucracy, it moves at a slower pace. But I think coming in as an agile charity fundraiser, you can make a difference.
mm,
And I also think education fundraisers would have a huge impact if they went into the charity sector. We should be cross pollinating a lot
yeah,
more with the
yeah.
ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. And I mean, you made the point a few times. It comes back to, I guess, regardless of the form of the income stream, it comes back to that relationship and being able to build that, and yeah, and that passion for the cause, and having those two sort of core skills, I guess, that you can then build and invest and bring around people. And is that what you're now doing then as a consultant in this, working in that space to help support, I guess, obviously I need to share your clients with us, but I guess a range of clients from small to larger organizations. What does work look like today for you?
Yeah, so it is, and I'm going to come on to trends in a minute because I just sort of give some value
Yeah,
add
that'd
to
be really
anyone
helpful.
watching this, rather than anyone having to come to us and ask for it. Yeah, so we help charities at all stages in their fundraising journey. Sometimes that is simply planning a campaign, undertaking prospect research. We place interim staff, so it might be going in and doing the
Yeah,
active fundraising. We do a fair amount of fundraising audits and feasibility studies. But actually, increasingly, the calls that I'm receiving from charities, they're pre-fundraising. So it's not actually, we've got this campaign, how do we make sure we've got a good return on investment? But it's perhaps, we've been funded primarily by statutory income, by fees. We're now having to look at the philanthropic side. How do
mm,
we go into that? It could be we've got a small number of staff, we need to gear up. Um, Are we compliant with the law, with the processes, the Charities Act 22, that side? It could be master planning. So they've perhaps got a vision. Had a client recently who got an amazing project, which is launching in November, so I can't mention it. And they'd already got some funding from two amazing organizations who recognize the value in this. But they didn't quite know how to get from here's the idea and we've got the funding to launch.
Yeah.
And so it was the master planning through that. So it was, well, what stages do you need to take to plan the project and attract more donors? What's your risk assessment? Do you need to recruit more people? What's your budget like? You know, do you have GDPR or HR issues within that? So it's fascinating for me because I am curious, nosy about people and projects. So I get to work on everything from here's half an hour's free advice for
Yeah.
the micro charities. And I'm only allowed to do a tiny bit of that before everyone starts bombarding me. But my boss is great, will allow me to do the odd free session right up to we're putting in a new database. Will you come in and do the data mapping with us, take us through moves management?
Yeah.
And we're planning a multi-million-pound campaign. Come and support us. So I've got this amazing breadth.
Yes.
It covers charities of every type imaginable, INGOs as well.
Yeah.
It is the most exciting workload imaginable.
And feels quite hands-on then, if you know, when it comes to mapping a data migration, that's, you know, times where you're right down in the detail and really hands-on with a project.
Yeah, so the great thing is I'm the director of the charity section, so we have consultants around the country, and they're often far more expert than I am in all areas of fundraising. So I'll bring them in when I think the project needs it. But I also do some hands-on stuff. So I'm doing the active grant making trust fundraising for a small archaeological charity at the moment. I did the business planning for that big project that's launching in November. I like databases. Sorry, I'm a bit of a geek. When I was a consultant, I subcontracted to one of the CRM companies out there, and I did their back end
Yeah.
sort of programming with the fundraisers. So I'm a bit of a geek. So I like that, and I can get stuck in. And actually, I'm going to segue straight away into trends. And this is something I think could help every organization out there, regardless of size. It's a trend we're seeing on the consultancy side, and I think it's going to become more important. So, relationship fundraising used to be kind of kept for the major donors, and major donors are whatever the organization decides for them because it's a bit time intensive. People have now realized that this mid value group of donors probably are being underutilized, and that's the big change. So, you've got your high value donors, you've got your community fundraising, your mass market, but those mid-value donors probably aren't being stewarded as well as they can. Now, databases are so sophisticated nowadays and easier to use than they used to be that something I've been doing with a number of clients is looking at the moves management of the mid-value piece. And I'm just going to say to everyone out there, if you have not segmented your database by sort of gift and frequency size, then spend a bit of time looking at that, because that mid-value group, if you do a segmentation plan for them and just them, use your database so that it's not too time intensive for you as a team, you will see the donations increase in that area. And I always like to say that fundraising, when done well, should always feel like it's one-to-one, whereas marketing is one-to-many. That mid-value, you can use one-to-many methods with MailChimp, Mailer, whatever you use, but it can feel like one-to-one. So I think for me, that's a growth area that's, I'm not going to say any fundraising's easy, but is easier for a lot of charities, particularly the small to medium sized, to actually increase their income.
Yeah, yeah, and like you say, maybe even got those contacts already to go, but just aren't utilising it. And I mean, obviously, you know, we're hearing a lot. You know, you talked about the press. I guess, you know, we're hearing a lot about how income is a struggle for charities across a whole range of organisations. Whether it's cost of living crisis that's seen funding fall, or local authorities that are obviously in positions of not having as much income to give away or to give out in grants and contracts and services. Are you seeing that reflected across your client group, and then hence why things like actually new approaches to your mid-level donors are really important? What is what you're experiencing and what we're reading is that the state that the sector is in?
It is, but I don't want to be shot down for this because I really do not want to minimize the pain that charities are going through because I know that and I hear it. It's not unusual in the sector. So I launched the 𝐼𝐸 Cathedral campaign from start in 2008 in the middle of the banking crisis.
Yeah.
I launched Bournemouth University fundraising in 2012 during a crash. There are all these stages, and the agile charities, the ones who can pivot and respond, will be the ones that succeed. It's tough out there, but it's always been tough. And if we look at when society is struggling, this is a horrible thing to say. There's always someone making money,
Yeah.
and perhaps you just need to change where you're looking at. So if we look at 2008 and 2012, the foundations that receive money from hedge funds rocketed
Yeah.
because people were hedging their bets against average people losing money. But then, some of those people gave the money away. So the money was still there. If we look at the pandemic, the luxury brands during the pandemic soared. They're struggling now because people who still had money, were still receiving income from wages, had disposable income. Now,
Yeah.
their charitable foundations gave more away.
Yeah.
There's a movement towards place-based giving increasingly. So here's a tip: if you're near any Jaguar Land Rover factories, they're launching, I think it's September, October, they'd issued a press release, and they're going to be giving money to all of the communities around their areas. So the money's there, it just shifts where it
Yeah.
is. I think the problem is that if you're a charity reliant on statutory fees and that's your model, and the
Sure.
governments encourage you to do that, and then they whip the rug away from under your feet, of course it's terrible. And
Yeah.
if you're volunteer led, it's even tougher because you're trying to keep your family going, your caring responsibilities, and look wider afield for
Yeah.
funds. It's hard,
Yeah.
but there have been lots of hard times out there. Some charities succeed, some don't. And this sadly is what happens every few years when there's a crash or a change in society and wealth.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you think it is within you that when you've had to work and launch, fundraising campaigns through, like you say, financial crashes and various different things. And you talk about the organisation that needs to be agile and pivot, but there's something about personal traits within an individual as well that make these things a success. And I know you've recognised, obviously, you're always part of a team, and I get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think some of those personal traits that you've been able to sort of fall upon that drive that have driven you forward in those moments?
I have a significant amount of imposter syndrome. I think a lot of women do, and probably women my age. So I'm always driven to try and prove myself because I don't believe I belong and I
Yeah.
shouldn't be in any of the jobs I'm in. And I think that makes me drive myself really hard. It is a passion for the
Yeah.
causes I'm working for, and I won't give up because I believe in them. I believe in every single project I've fundraised for, and I want to see them succeed.
Mm.
And I think that does communicate itself to donors. I've had to develop a thick skin
Yeah.
over the years, and sometimes you have to bulldoze your way through with an organization to get them to accept perhaps that they need to be more agile, or change needs to happen. And that's not easy. I've got lots of flaws in my character, so I get bored easily. So, building a really successful team around me actually is probably why I've succeeded in the past, because
Yeah.
I always try and recruit to my weaknesses.
Yes. Yeah.
So I try and recruit people that can keep me on track and stop me getting excited by the new shiny thing and say, no, Claire, you've got to deliver this.
Mm.
So I've had brilliant support networks all the way around me. And I think that is probably what drives me. I like seeing people grow. So I home grow staff. They go on. I train them. They go to new charities. It's sad, but that's what they should do.
Yeah.
And I take joy out of that. And I want to make change. There's so much social. It sounds corny, but there's so much social injustice out there. There's so much
Mm.
need. I can only make a tiny, tiny bit of change, but that drop in the ocean. If we all do that,
Yeah.
that's how we affect real change. That's what drives me. That probably sounds corny, and that's probably what almost everyone says on your podcast because we're all
No.
working for charities.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that's fine. It's great to be motivated by wanting to make a difference. That's not something that we want to downplay, and yeah, absolutely should be something that lights the fire under people to go out and be motivated day in, day out. And I wonder whether there's that sense of consultancy suits you in that basis of, like you say, needing that new project, or that can sometimes feel a little bit bored or want to move on to that next thing. Not although you talked about longevity in roles. It's not like you've skipped about after short amount of time. But is that kind of that sense for you? Or how have you found that transition? Maybe is a better question around from being in a permanent role within one organisation to consultancy, because one of the things that we are seeing across the market as well, as we talk about trends, is that more people are moving into portfolio careers or consultancy careers, freelancing in that way. We've seen a vast increase in that across fundraising and marketing, across PR, across those functions. So, yeah, how's that transition been for you? And what are the pros, what are the cons?
The transition has been fun, exciting, and not without challenges. So I went from a university, it's like a tanker. When it
Mm,
wants to turn, it takes 6 months to turn. They are
sure.
so big, bureaucratic. Massive turnover. Fundraising wasn't mission critical. It isn't in a lot of universities. Massive amount of staff and students to a small company which works for a wide range of charities. So the cultural shift in, you so many processes to go through to being freed up from processes, that was incredibly welcome for me.
Mm,
The agility was instantly there. Um, Going from, very secure, very organized to consultancy is less secure, let's be honest. And for anyone thinking about the freelance jump, I always say take a risk, do it. But you have to recognize that your income is based on how well charities are doing. If they don't have money to look for consultants, and you're not going to get the work. Um, it's just as competitive as fundraising because I'm up against other consultants.
yep,
Have a terrific network around me again, but we're a small team. So whereas in Bournemouth University of 1,700 people, we had a legal department, a finance department, a marketing department. We all do everything in a small company, and you have to be
yeah,
willing to do that. Now that excites me. I know it's not for everyone. The lack of structure in consultancy isn't for everyone. So I am a bit of a control freak, but I like jumping from topic to topic.
sure.
You don't have a structured calendar because you don't know what's around the corner.
Mm, mm,
But I can translate that into a very quick story. Early on in my career, I'd organised a PR event. I was going to have all of Scotland's media there. It had taken me months to set up. It was a massive undertaking for the charity. There was nothing going to intervene in this except Princess Diana died on the day and no press turned up.
yes, yeah, yeah. There's nothing you can do. Yeah.
No. And so it's the same in consultancy. You can plan, you do not know what's around the corner.
Mm,
So pros, it's fast paced, it's exciting. You get to make a real difference to a wide range of charities. The cons, it's hard work. That fast paced isn't for everyone. It's uncertain. And, the issues that you might experience as an in-house fundraiser are actually still there as a
mm,
consultant. You'll still have politics. You'll still sometimes have that gulf between trustees and CEO and what they both feel they want to deliver. And you'll see that as a consultant or as a member of staff. And the financial challenges are still there,
yeah,
whether you're in-house or out-house.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Claire, there's so many questions and avenues and different directions that we could take this, but our time is up. So, but I love to sort of finish these podcasts with the question of, as we spent a bit of time reflecting on your career today. I mean, if you could go back and speak to your I don't know. Yeah, speak to yourself. I guess maybe just before you went maybe into that first interview, or maybe out of it. I don't know. I don't know when would be the better time. But you could give yourself a piece of advice going into your career, or a bit of wisdom or insight. What is it that you think you'd say to your younger self?
Take the risks. It's going to be hard and you will cry, that is nothing to be ashamed of, because at the end it's worth it.
Yeah. Perfect. No, that's great, Claire. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. If you're happy, we'll tag you and obviously where you work on the LinkedIn posts. And I guess if people have got questions, we can obviously point them in your direction to be able to get in touch. And
Absolutely.
Brilliant. No, that's great. And well, Claire, I'm really, really grateful for the time and the insights and some of that work. Some of the trends there that you've shared as well. Hopefully, some really good takeaways for people that are listening. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Charity Changemakers podcast. I hope you've been inspired by the incredible work being done across the charity sector. And this episode is proudly brought to you by my business, 𝐬𝐮𝐬 Charity Recruitment. We are passionate about delivering top-tier recruitment services to the charity sector that we care so much about. If your organisation is looking for expert support, then we'd love to help. Please do get in touch today. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please leave a review and don't forget to subscribe, like and share, because it helps us reach more people and showcase the amazing charities that come on the show. And for more episodes, please visit our website, 𝐬𝐮𝐬recruitment.co.uk. So until next time, keep change making.